Welcome back to the Fear
and Beer podcast,
where we discuss all things Halloween Horror Nights, horror movies,
and just a little bit of beer.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Seamus.
Like scary movies.
Uh-huh.
Here's Johnny.
It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Did you miss me?
Aren't you drinking? I never drink. Why?
Before we get into tonight's episode, we want to remind all of those listening on Apple Podcasts to drop us a 5-star review. It helps us grow as a podcast and build our audience. If you're listening on Spotify or any other platform, follow us, and don't forget to share with friends and family who might have a little bit of the strange in them as well.
And while you're on those socials, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, be sure to find us, Fear and Beer Pod. Give us a like, share, and you can always message us. We love to interact with all you guys. We're back, and I feel like in true Horror Nights fashion, a couple little Easter eggs or seeds of potential were planted right after we released our episode last week. So last week we did our Megan review. We were joined by Kevin and Chris. And then it seemed like right after that, we got that bombshell of all these people guessing the clue from Horror Night Nightmares that it is a potential IP for this year. So a little interesting. That's kind of a big get right there. So we figured we'd take this episode to kind of discuss that, talk about the potential scenes that we could see, talk about the validity of it. Is this something that's actually going to happen? Because this is a big deal. This is like a dream for a lot of people for a long time. This is always at the top of the wish list. So we decided to kind of just talk on that a little bit. And not only that, we decided to bring on an extra person to kind of chit chat with. So we've been talking about this forever. And in true Fear and Beer fashion, we are terrible at planning. We're terrible planning ahead. We just kind of go with it. But we finally lined it all up so that we have Michael from Hallowed Thrills with us tonight. So Michael, if you want to jump on to say hello and kind of introduce anybody that's listening that might not know about all your stuff going on, you can kind of bring them up to speed.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who don't know, with that perfect introduction from Nick, I'm Michael from Hallowed Thrills. I run a little bit of a YouTube channel. Has a couple subscribers. I'm doing pretty well. Recently broke 1,000 at the end of last year, so
nice.
We're doing pretty good. But if you guys want to follow me, I do a lot of HHN stuff, a lot of just haunts in general. And then over the summer, I do some theme park stuff. I do have a theme park trip planned for July to head out to Texas. So if you guys are interested in any sort of that type of stuff, you definitely want to follow me over there on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, all at Hallowed Thrills.
Nice. That's huge, breaking that 1,000 mark. I mean, we have our YouTube up, but it's pretty much just like putting our episodes up. It's just a second streaming service for us. But you do a lot of really good, like in park vlog style stuff, which is, if only we had the time, it would be fun for us to do it. But it's just not in the cards for how we're doing things here. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about tonight. It's just really it. So before we get to it, let me pull up this beer info because this is I picked a beer up, not planning for it tonight, but it fit our horror macabre style themed, and there's a kind of a way to tie it in. And I got to pronounce this brewery right because it's local and it's weird. So this is from Magnanimous Brewing right in Tampa. So it's a little micro brew. And this is called Bury Yourself Alive, but Berry. So berry, dairy. It's something there. But it is an imperial sour ale with blueberry, raspberry, and blackberry. So I'm expecting like a very sour, punch it in the mouth kind of deal with this one. So like I said, I've never seen it before. Really cool can art. Very purple, little gravestone, little skeleton hand popping up from the grave, going up onto the tombstone. And I figured it was fitting enough to purchase because I'm sure at some point I'll find a way to tie it in, and I did. So we'll go in on this one. What do you got, Seamus? A little silver bullet, some Bud Lights tonight?
Yeah, you know my hard and fast rule when we do this remotely.
Yep.
I drink the NFL beers, so
Yep.
That's what I'm drinking tonight. No theme. I mean, I guess it's I don't know, I'm colorblind, so we could go with the Bud Light Blue and the Orlando City Purple, and I'm watching the game. So it could be. We'll just go with that.
Okay, I like it. We always find a way to tie it in. And Michael, you said you had a beer as well, too, joining in on the festivities.
Yes, I have a very special beer that I specifically held on to for a little bit to until we got this situated. But this is a very special, like made specifically for an event. This is called the Blob beer
Ooh,
from Root Down Brewing Company. It's a local brewery up here in Pennsylvania. It's out of Phoenixville. And this was brewed specifically for the Colonial Theater in celebration of Blob Fest for the original Blob movie.
ooh,
And it is a Belgian style wheat ale that is conditioned with raspberries, blueberries, and blackberries. And let's see, very low bitterness on it, and it is more of kind of like almost like a rubyish red color to kind of go with the color of the blob from the original.
nice. We got the same berries in ours because I got blueberry, raspberry, blackberry in this one. But it is interesting how with beers like this, you can really, shift off of a different exit. Yours is much different than the sour that I'm about to encounter, which I'm sure is
Oh, shit.
just off the nose. It smells. You get a lot of that blackberry. I'm not getting much blueberry and raspberry, but the nose is giving me a lot of that blackberry, which would be fitting for the can art itself being that dark purple, that plum color. So I'm very interested. I do like my sours.
Oh yeah.
They are. I do have to drink them like seldom because a little bit is enough for me. It's like snake venom.
I'm a big sour guy. Love me a good sour, especially that one that was at HHN.
Oh, the
Ooh.
lacto coolers.
Oh my gosh.
Those were. If those don't make a comeback, I will be a little bit sad. That's for sure.
Those were dangerous, man.
Yeah. So let's see what this thing's all about real quick. Ooh. It's not as sour as I thought, but it's like, ooh, very, and obviously I should have assumed that, but it's very berry. Very
What is
berry.
it labeled as? Like, what is this style labeled as?
An imperial sour ale.
Oh, okay. So you would think that it would be relatively sour, but
Yeah.
sometimes they're not. Sometimes
No,
they're
it's
actually pretty low key.
yeah. It's more tart than anything. It's a lot, and I buy these things based off of can art and name more than style or flavoring. I'm not a huge like raspberry, like blackberry fan. I like blueberry a lot, but the other berries just are more tart for me, whereas those blueberries have like that sour pucker a little bit. So this one's not necessarily. I'll finish it, but I don't know if I would be purchasing this again. For me, it's a good beer, but for my taste profiles, it's not something I'm running towards again. But it's fine. It's a sour beer with a lot of berry. That's the name of the game, apparently.
Yeah, I was a big fan of the beer that I have when it released last year in very short quantities. And it's more like on the fruity side, which is honestly I'm kind of I do enjoy more of a fruity beer just because I'm not really big into beer. So if it doesn't taste like beer, then I enjoy it.
Yep.
Is kind of how I view my taste in beer. But I like, which is the reason why I really like sour beers, just because they don't really have that like hoppy taste to them.
Yep. Yeah.
But this one with all the fruit in it kind of mellows out the wheat and the hoppiness of it.
Yeah. I'm all over the beer, like all over the board with beer. I enjoy just about everything. There's a place in my heart for just every single type of beer, but sours I've definitely grown on me a lot the last couple of years, and it is like I have them seldomly now. I don't drink. You can't really go out and have like 6 sours. I mean, at least I can't. But I've grown an appreciation for them for sure. So not bad, just not exactly my flavor wheelhouse per se. So let's dive into this main topic of discussion, which is that rumor of it coming around, which is it just seemed like it kind of came out of nowhere. Spec Map 1, it wasn't really hinted at all. And it just sort of appeared. And these hints and these clues that people solve, I don't have the time to fully go through. Like, I'm a part of Horror Night Nightmares Discord, and every now and then I'll pop on and just kind of see if I can kind of catch up a little bit. But man, the messages are just constant, so I can never fully catch up. So when a new hint drops in there or a new thing is solved, I'm usually like the last person to find out because I just don't have the time. But apparently they were hinting towards it, and who knows if this was in joking fashion, if this was just pure speculation, if this was actually something that people have heard. It's kind of all up in the air. I guess time will tell whenever that Spec Map version 2 comes out. But I guess just to start this discussion, we should just go around and talk about if it, and I'm assuming it is based off of the 2017-2019 remakes. Is this something that we'd be, and it's a silly question to ask, but is this something we'd be excited for, really excited for, indifferent? Let's go with Seamus. You can kick us off. I know you're Stephen King love, so what do we think about this?
As far as excitement's concerned, yeah. I mean, if it's really going to happen, I mean, I'd be pumped. I think, as we've discussed before on on our Spec Map episode, when we talked about the new Spec Map, we both said that right as of right now, what's on the Spec Map IP wise, there aren't very many boom options. There isn't that one like that's going to get everybody super super excited and over the top and ready to drop as much money as possible to get here for it. Whereas I think if this was really to happen, then that kind of changes the discussion completely, because obviously I think this movie, it specifically, has been requested numerous times, has been, people have wanted it for so long. And I think it's always been said that, like, we just can't get the rights to it. We can't make it work. We can't figure it out. If they have finally figured a way to do it, I think it's a huge get for them. So yes, I'm personally super excited. I don't know if you're asking if I should talk about whether or not I think it's going to happen yet, but I mean,
we'll get to that part of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as excitement is concerned, yes, of course, that I'm just super pumped about it. I'm a Stephen King fan. I'm a nut for Stephen King. So I've read everything he's ever written, almost everything. So yeah, this would be a big deal. Granted, we have to assume it will be the Skarsgård Pennywise. It won't be the the original Tim Curry Pennywise, which is sad in its own way. But but either way, I'm pumped for anything as long as we're talking about it truly coming to the event. I'm definitely down for it. So you can tell that I'm pretty excited for it.
Yeah. Now, Michael, I mean, I knew Seamus's answer ahead of time, but for you, where would this rank? How's this layout for the rest of things for you?
I mean, just like Seamus, looking at that first speculation map, there wasn't really anything that kind of struck me as, this, I have to go. I mean, there's a couple things that we're not entirely sure about yet, especially that guitar with the lightning bolt through it. That could still kind of turn out to be something bigger than we think it is. But if this ends up coming to the event, if it ends up showing up, that would definitely be our big IP to come into this year that would really get the people in there. Now, personally, between two properties that we've kind of been asking about coming to the event, this is probably the one that I would much rather have, in my opinion, Scream come to the event than it, but it is more likely just because of WB no longer doing Horror Made Here.
Yep.
Which kind of leads us to believe that maybe they're going to try to shop out the IP rights for other horror events, because they got to make money somehow.
Yes, yeah, and it's just sitting on the shelf, at this point for that aspect of it. Now, just to follow up with all that stuff, I would be very excited. Again, just to reiterate what both of you have said, is that first spec map. It's always fun, and I get it. It's hard to tie down these big wins. You don't want to kind of show your hand too much and just be like, here it is, this is it, even if they knew about it. But it did seem a little lackluster. There wasn't that draw. There was no Beetlejuice, Ghostbusters, Stranger Things, even the Halloweens and the Texas Chainsaws. They have a strong association with the name and horror, and it lines right up there with, even if you haven't even, for whatever reason, if you haven't even seen the 17 and 19 remake, but you remember the 90s one, and if you hadn't watched any of those medias, the book. It's a cultural reference that everyone knows about. So for me, yeah, this would be that big draw. This would get people in the door, and this would be one of the biggest gets that they probably could get. And interesting enough that you brought up, I wasn't sure what their rights were. I knew that at some point they had this as like a haunted house as their own thing. I wasn't sure about the rights of it, but I know that they are talking, or it's one of those weird internet rumors where you're not sure how confirmed it actually is until you see it. But the Welcome to Derry, I believe, is going to be a prequel of sorts that's going to be going to HBO. Obviously, we're pretty far out if they haven't even really confirmed or filmed it yet. So it's definitely far out from release. So it is interesting that it's being rumored now, while this potential prequel series, it's not going to be released with anything. So it's not like it's used for promotional purposes. So it does seem a little odd in that respect. But either way, this would be a huge get. Now, I guess we can kind of lead right into the aspect of, where do we feel the validity of this, because it does seem, I don't want to say unobtainable, but it just seemed like this is a big get, one of the bigger ones in recent years, because even stuff like, The Weekend and Stranger Things and stuff like that, Stranger Things was currently airing on Netflix, so it kind of made sense. The Weekend, being as big as he is, had that catalog that lined up enough. They didn't seem too far fetched. Now this one seems a little out there. Like you mentioned, Scream. Scream would make sense because as of right now, it's relevant, being that they just released the new movie. Whereas it's been 3 years since the newest movie. Obviously, it's not saying it's dropped in relevancy, but typically that seems to be what they use to promote their houses, is what's in theaters, what's coming to theaters, what's been out in the past year or so. So it does seem a little odd, and I guess I'll just kind of dive right into my answer of, do I completely buy in? Sadly, not entirely, not yet. Maybe if it comes on the speculation map and then it kind of sits there again for the next one, and we're inching closer and closer to Horror Nights, then I'll start to buy in. But I don't want to get my hopes up for a property this big, and a property that I would tremendously enjoy. This isn't like last year, Evil Dead Rise and Evil Dead were rumored at one point, and it's like, I get it. It's a big franchise. I enjoyed them, but it's not necessarily my exact cup of tea. It's kind of like Texas Chainsaw. Like it's a big name, and I get it, but that's not really my slasher. It is more in my vein. I do enjoy that movie a lot. I enjoy the 90s series a lot. So that would really get me pumped up. But for it just being like a little cluey, hinty thing, I'm not sure if I completely buy in on it yet. I'd say if I had to gauge it from a 1 to a 10, I'd put it at like a 4, if anything. What are you thinking, Seamus? How do you feel about the chances of it possibly even being there? Where do you stand on that? I guess
I feel like if it was just something that someone had mentioned, said, hey, I heard rumors, or even if it was just like, hey, we may have a clue this could be it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Just that by itself, I'd probably be like, nah. I mean, I'm pretty
Yeah.
skeptical as a person, so I mean,
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't believe a whole lot to begin with. But
It
I think what helps me feel a little better about it is that Horror Night Nightmares did comment on 365's post,
Yep.
And I forget what they said specifically, but they kind of said, "Is it?" or something like that.
Yeah,
With the
because
capital letters.
it was Mark from Horror Night Nightmares that dropped this clue. So it wasn't like somebody in their Discord. It was Mark who runs Horror
Right.
Night
So I
Nightmares
think
that started it.
because it's them, and just based on, I mean, this is going solely off of their track record. So I'm not saying that it's confirmed or anything like that. But just based off their track record, I feel better knowing that if they're kind of like putting this out there, that there's a good chance it could be true. Um, but I mean, I'm still obviously not. I'm not going to say for 100% certainty that I believe this is going to happen. But I think I'm about 50-50 right now. I think that I can not getting my hopes up to the point where like if it doesn't happen, I'll be disappointed because obviously it's speculation. It's not something you can bank on and then be mad when it doesn't actually
Yeah,
happen.
yeah,
But,
yeah, yeah.
at least from my perspective or from my opinion, I think that I'm not ready to totally dive in, but I mean, like I said, based on those factors, I think I could sit here and say about 50% sure that this could happen. So patiently waiting to hear more news.
Yeah.
Now we get
And
Spec Map 2 or 3 or whatever it is, and it's like you see like a picture of a clown or something. I'll be like, all right, hold on a minute.
I bet on Spec Map 2 there's a like little image of a balloon.
Yeah,
I
Even a
I
balloon, yeah.
I bet they'll do that. Michael, what are you thinking? Where do you stand on the possibility or the probability of it being there?
So I just want to kind of backtrack a little bit, because you were saying about the Welcome to Derry,
Yeah.
in for HBO Max, and I mean, at least as far as I was aware, um, the release date is still next year, 2024.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, if you as a production company haven't released anything for a movie in now 3 years for this property, wouldn't you try to get some people excited if you don't actually have your
Mhm.
own horror event anymore?
Very
Wouldn't you
true.
try to
Yeah.
shop it out to
I would
somebody
agree.
else to try to gain some traction ahead of your own show coming out?
That is a good point to kind of preemptively reintroduce, I guess, people to like, oh yeah, Pennywise is a thing. He does exist still.
Yeah, I mean that's where I'm at with that, as far as trying to continue to make this more of a possibility in my mind.
Right.
But yeah, with HN Nightmares talking about it and the clue that they had about it, and how it was solved, and they kind of also, like you guys said, commented on the fact that yeah, that is the correct answer to what their clue is saying. It does make me feel a little bit more of the possibility, because yeah, like Seamus said, you could literally have just someone walking through Universal just being like, "Hey, you hear Pennywise is coming to the event," and you
Yeah.
kind of just brush that off because it's it's here. She said, he said, and they said, but it's I mean, honestly, it could come, just because I just feel like their HN Nightmares is more predominantly featured in speculation in the community. But not only did they mention about this coming, pretty much simultaneous to that kind of being quote unquote announced as the answer to the clue, Rumors Legacy also kind of tweeted out like, "Oh, like that's huge, interesting. I wonder how that would how it would fit, or something
Yeah.
like that." And I was like, that kind of really pushes it forward a little bit more for me, because they're also pretty well known in speculation as far as being pretty much correct in their
Yeah.
guesses.
Yeah. The two rumor people that I actually, take for their word is Legacy and HHN Nightmare. So those are the two that I really, through their track record for the last couple of years, not just like a year or whatever, but they've got a long tenure of pretty much nailing a lot of stuff.
And there's a lot of stuff that's being solved with Legacy's stuff recently that kind of really has me interested, especially because a lot of it is matching up with what HN Nightmares has been putting out as far as speculation maps, not only in Orlando but also in Hollywood. And it's definitely it's definitely making me take a second look at those speculation maps and be like, yeah, there might be some more to this, and that these could be more right than we know off the bat than normal.
Yeah, and we've in the past, I think, gone back and revisited the version 1 speculation from the previous year, and there's ties into a lot of, I think their number was like 6 out of the 10 that were, conceivably what we got. So it was like, all right, I mean, when you're batting 60%, that's huge. So they're reputable, that's for sure. It's there. So if they're saying it and they're hinting at it, there's credence to it, but I gotta see it. I gotta see the on the map a little bit just to kind of feel like it's now more than just like a little hinty clue kind of thing. When it's like, and not to say when it's on the map it's official, but when I see it on the map, there's speculation map version 2, which we'll probably get next month, early to mid-April, if I had to assume, if I had to guess, that's when it would kind of roll out. And I really hope that this is on there, because this, like we mentioned, this would be the headliner. This would get asses in seats. Not that there's seats, but there's places in the park. This is the moneymaker for sure. So now it kind of leads into, what exactly would we get? We talked about, or Seamus mentioned, I would say it's a safe bet that if it was there, it would not be the Tim Curry 90s TV series. It would be the Skarsgård, 17 and 19, part 1, part 2. And this is a lot to kind of break down into a house. So I guess we'll just kind of open floor it and say is, what are some settings or scenes, or how do you think this will work as a house? Are we going to get the same little characters, or is it going to be more centered around Pennywise? Is it going to be just centered around the town itself, or are we going to actually get like the characters from the movies?
I'm feeling more very small amount of the first movie, but primarily focused on the adult, the kids as adults from the second film. Because I feel like that's kind of, I mean, I feel like it's more of a easier thing to pull off, especially with casting goes, with getting actors and everything for that. Now don't get me wrong, they do have to definitely have, if they're going to do this, they got to do it right and have both movies in there, at least in somewhat shape or form. To at least kind of build the story a little bit before you really get into it. But all I'm saying is, if it does come, we better get Pennywise doing the little high kick dance. That's all I'm saying. The little jig, man. If he's not in the house doing that, I don't want it.
Yeah, take it back. I send it back. Yeah, good point too. Where it's like the whole part 1, part 2 stuff. Because I have not watched these movies super recently, so I would like to go back. But I do feel like, from a casting perspective, it would be much harder to do that part 1 stuff. But I feel like the part 1 stuff is the more iconic stuff. And if this were ever a scene, I would say that it'd be tough to do like a whole rain effect, but it'd be cool for the first scene, almost like Graveyard Games, where you're like walking through a set and there's an actor out there. If you just had the actor in the little yellow raincoat chasing after a paper boat, I think that'd be a cool little opening, but it'd be hard to do in like, the rain coming down and stuff like that. But with sound effects, you could do the misters, and you could have like a running water rig on, out of the pedestrian pathway, and you could have a little thing on there. But I feel like a lot of those more memorable scenes would be the children's scenes from part 1. And you can have that, late 80s, early 90s nostalgia factor to it, which seems to be always a hit. But what are you got anything, Seamus, that you kind of, how would you pick this house?
I think you can do both parts, because I don't think you're going to get like in-depth, storytelling with this. You kind of go into this knowing what the story is, so they don't have to spend a ton of time like trying to establish the what and the why and the who. And you don't necessarily have to have, you know, a ton of live actors playing the kid characters. Like I think you could do like the opening scene with the sailboat, and you don't necessarily need an actor for it in general. You could just have, you
A
know,
sailboat
a
and a
sailboat
swimmer.
kind of following down as you walk by the storm drain or whatever, and then maybe even have like a raincoat or something like that, kind of giving that appearance. But um, I mean, I would think it'd be cool if they could set it up where you can actually see in the storm drain and someone's down in there playing Pennywise, and he comes up out of the storm drain, or like has his hand come out of the storm drain or something like that. Um, and that could be the actor. You don't really need to have a kid actor there because you know what that scene is. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
unless you're someone that's literally never seen anything having to do with this movie at all or the book at all, then yeah, you wouldn't know what's going on. But I think most people, even if they haven't seen the movie more than like one time, would know what is being established here. So you don't really necessarily have to have the kids there. But I mean, there are certain scenes where you almost would want to. But I think this would focus more on Pennywise, anyways. I think it almost would be like us as the those
Like,
attending the event going through the house. We would almost have to we would almost be the kids slash adult characters from the movie, and it'd be more Pennywise trying to like terrorize us, because the idea is he's feeding off of our fear, right? So
yeah.
I think you'd almost treat us kind of like that, and we would kind of be walking through a lot of the bigger scenes from both of those movies. They probably could spend more time focusing on the second movie if you really wanted to. It really wouldn't. I don't think it would be a massive issue if they did that, but I think you could kind of piece both of them together and kind of fit, you know, hit the major story beats or the major beats from both movies in one house if you wanted to. Otherwise, you split it up and you just do one movie or the other movie and be done with it. But um, yeah, I don't really I haven't really seen the movies in a while. I shouldn't say that because I say I'm such a huge fan, but I haven't watched them in a while. But I think there's
I mean,
enough
once you
like
watch, I mean, I've watched them enough myself too, but I haven't watched it recently. It's not like I'm sitting at home watching it every couple days. You know, it's
yeah.
just,
I mean, the thing
it is
is
what it
like
is.
I feel like if they wanted to get ambitious with it, there's a lot of things that the Pennywise character does in the movie. Like he transforms into a lot of different things. So there's like there's ways for them to be ambitious with it if they really wanted to go crazy and build these, you know, elaborate costumes and or sets for Pennywise. Otherwise, there's a lot of good scenes in that with the balloons and him kind of being behind the balloons at one point in the first movie, or when he transforms into that big like painting like monster creature thing, or when he's coming out of the projector. That's also another
Yeah.
good scene. There's a lot of great scenes. Of course, I'm just picking ones from the first movie. I swear I'm not trying to push the first movie, but like they're the ones that I remember most is the stuff from that movie specifically. And I don't know if that speaks to just how much I preferred one or the other, but there's just so many like things you remember specifically about them that I think that they could probably do some pretty good effects with and kind of make that happen. So I don't know. I mean, again, I don't speculate too hard because I'm not super creative, but that's kind of the things that come to mind for me. As long as I get, you know, plenty of, you know, Pennywise, I'd be happy. You can almost kind of do it like the Halloween house was, where it's like you recognize the setting, and then the main characters for the most part are Michael and Laurie. Like you get those two, you're kind of set, and you remember these things from the movie itself. So if they do something like that, I'd probably be happy with it. So
Yeah. And I'm curious too, do you think we would get those various forms of fear? Like, will we get, you know, the leper and the painting lady
oh yeah,
and
I could
stuff
see
like
that.
that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would be interested to see like those as different scenes, maybe
I would
before we even fully get Pennywise.
I would rather them do that than try to come up with their own things. You know what I mean? Like I don't, not to say that they couldn't, but I'd want them to kind of focus on what was in the movie or movies, because that's what you remember. That's what we've seen already. So it would actually, I think, be easier for them because they have something to work off of or a template to work off of, and if they're given the authority to kind of like do their own thing with it, that would be fine too. But I mean, I just I don't know how well that would work versus just kind of like following whatever template the movie provides them, you know,
Yeah.
from the get go.
Now just imagine this though. Giant like mind flayer style puppet of the Pennywise crab.
I would like that. That would be cool. And then at the end, we all just yell at it, and it goes away.
Yep, there you go.
We
That's
just
the end of the
call
house.
it stupid clown or something, and it like feels
I'm not
bad
afraid
and
of you.
shrivels away. Yeah.
Well, either that or you have the deadlights at the end of the house.
I would.
That
I
would-
would hope that we get a lot of orange light. Like, give
that
me a
would
lot of
be
orange light.
a cool thing. And I'm trying to. I feel like there's a ride, probably at Disney or something like that, where it's they have the light shining right into your face, and so you can't really see anything except those lights in the dark hallway. That would be cool with like a really narrowing, blacked out hallway with the 3 lights, and you could have them like slowly spinning or something like that, and have a hard left or hard right into the next room. But it'd be cool to feel like I'm unknowingly walking into the deadlights, which would be interesting. Would be a cool segue to get into his lair. That would be a cool way to kind of introduce that aspect of the character. But I am curious too, how much would we get. The house setting would be interesting too, just like going into the abandoned house, finding the well, and kind of going through that. I don't know how much of like Derry we actually need. There's a lot of great scenes in the movie of that just take place in random locations. I don't think we're going to be visiting the pharmacy or the library or something like that. But those were really crucial scenes in that part 1. But it is interesting that I'm kind of tending towards part 1 right now as well. So it's interesting that I'm leaning towards that, because part 2, I mean, has a lot of good stuff, but again, the settings they seem to be like a little bit more away from the actual story of Pennywise. But it would be cool. I mean, we did get a couple of those maze style scenes, in The Weekend, I think it was, and then in what was that one? Us, I believe it was, where it's those carnival game styled rooms where it kind of, that would be a fun scene to have like Pennywise behind the mirrors, essentially those two-way mirrors.
That would definitely be terrifying, at least in my opinion. Just walk right up to a mirror and it turns into just a giant clown.
Yeah,
with his teeth just wide open there. Oh my god, that would.
Especially if they did like what they typically do in those rooms where it's mannequins almost. So it's like you have those fake outs. And it's like, oh, is this it? Is this it? Nope, that's god damn it, it got me again. It's just that would be cool to kind of see. But it is interesting. I do like Seamus's point that I think it would transform us there and essentially put us in their shoes. So, the characters, while they're iconic, I think if we're doing an It house, we're doing it for Pennywise. So they're a little inconsequential. So I think we would kind of fill the void in that respect.
Yeah, there are definitely a couple scenes that would require the kids, but yeah, definitely for the most part, it would be more focused on Pennywise, and I feel like that would be a much better way for HHN to kind of tackle this type of house. Just as not only from a casting standpoint, but just as a better kind of flow for the house.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, we definitely need the iconic. Was it Eddie with the cast? Some character in there is going to have a cast that says "loser" with a V over the S. So that'll have to make an appearance if that is actually going to be coming to Horror Nights.
Yeah, you gotta have that beep 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 beep.
Richie. Yep, beep beep Richie. Yeah, and these movies are just chock full of potential great house scenes, but it is a matter of how do you condense it. It's tough. The book itself was condensed not to just a movie. It was a full TV series, and then was split into 2 almost 5 hours of total screen time between the 2 movies. So there's a lot to dissect.
Just before, I know that the audience is going to tear you to shreds, it wasn't a TV series, it was a 2-part TV movie.
Our
But
TV movie, yeah.
regardless, I know where you're going with it. It's
Yeah.
they did have to. I mean, think about it, the book itself is 1,000 pages, roughly. It was not his first long form epic tome, but it was one of his first. Like I think it was The Stand was like his first big long 1,000+ page book or something like that, and then this was I think his second of that length or something like that. But either way, Stephen King likes to write a fuck ton of words in his books, and this book is one of them. So there's a lot in there. Same with the movies. So they had a ton of material to work with. It wasn't like Peter Jackson making 3 movies out of a 200-page children's book. We're talking like a lot of material to work with. So there's a lot of visual things that they can pull from. So again, I don't know how much this is deviating from what you were talking about, but think about it. Like you said, like both those movies are probably 2.5 hours long. You'd say roughly, like
Yeah,
2
right
hours
around there.
long. So 4.5, maybe 5 hours, of movie material. So they're not going to get everything, obviously, in the house. But again, I'll reiterate: if they hit the major scenes, the major visual effects, then I think that would be something that'd be pretty successful.
Yeah, I think so as well. It would be tough to kind of nail everything that they presented to us in all forms of media. Whether it's the TV movie, the book, or the movie itself. So interesting enough. So any other discussion, I guess, on it? Is there any final words on it before we get into one little minor thing that we kind of discuss about?
I think my only question for you guys would be: would you expect this to be in a soundstage or in a pop-up?
I would say soundstage for sure.
I
The
would
biggest
agree.
thing they got, I think so.
Yeah, I'm as much as it could potentially work in a tent. I feel like if we get the rights from WB, they're 100% going to be like, this has to go on a
Correct.
soundstage. There's
Yeah,
no
I
ifs,
agree.
ands, or buts around it. Like we
Mhm.
Yeah,
need your full attention to our IP.
I agree.
Yeah.
So, what would you want your? I mean, again, I don't want to stick on it too long, but what would your like ideal facade be? Like, your big facade that you walk into. Like, what would you want for this particular house?
Oh boy. I think I'll have to just stick with what I said earlier, which is I just want that Georgie scene. I want that little paper boat to be prevalent. I
Yeah,
want somebody with a little raincoat, whether you mentioned whether it's just laying there like half out of the sewer or it's actual character like running up and down chasing the boat. And then I want to have that you could even put just little lights in a fake sewer to kind of resemble the eyes, and you can have the audio playing of like their conversation, like, hey Georgie, and,
yeah, I'd agree.
have that playing around. I think that would be a perfect way to just kick it off. I mean, I know I don't want to say it's redundant because it hasn't really ever been done, but that's just like if you know it, you know that part of it. So it's like, okay, I get it. But I think it's such an important aspect to the story that you need that to kind of kickstart it, I think.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, I'm on the same wavelength with that because personally, there's nothing that I can really truly think of that would be like a massive over the top facade that I could pull from the movie. Like the most iconic thing would 100% be the very first thing, and that starts the movies. So if
Mhm.
you're going to start a house, that's probably the best way to do it is with that sewer grate
Yeah,
scene, the boat. I mean, that's only the only thing that I could really think of as being a perfect start.
yeah, I'd agree. I think they've done like pseudo outdoor scenes before. Like when they did, um, oh my god, Hill House, the big outdoor facade of the mansion. Do the same thing here, but rather than being a mansion, it would be like a regular house, but like what looks like a street in the thunderstorm and the rain and the mist and that sort of thing. So they could do a really good job with that. I think like halfway through the house or at some point in the house, I'd want like a not a facade, but a big like sewer opening that you walk through because
That would be cool.
that's a
Mhm.
big it's a big
Yeah.
deal where you're kind of going underground into the sewer. At some point, you need to kind of do that, but obviously, they would find a great way of being able to make all these things kind of work together and fit into the space that they're given. So I have very little belief that we shouldn't have faith in them to pull it off.
Oh yeah, I mean, if they get this one, I have complete faith in what their abilities are to kind of pull this off. So I guess a little side discussion, because something popped up right before we started recording.
We got
And
breaking
that is
news.
not news necessarily, but I guess breaking speculation. So Horror Night Nightmares posted the little eye emoji with what looks to be a nuclear explosion going off. Now, people are kind of all over the board on what this could be. This could be an announcement. People are referencing other properties, IPs, and I don't. For me, I guess we can kind of discuss what we think this means, because it could lead us into something. But for me, I get like a negative feeling from this. I feel like something big dropped off, like, blow it up, like the map has changed, like big news. I don't view this as like a holy cow, they acquired something crazy. I view this as like a holy shit, something's gone. And my first impression is, did The Last of Us drop? Did they lose that one? Because that's like their biggest IP that was rumored up until it. So like, that's kind of where my mind heads towards. What do you guys think that this implies?
I mean, I'm usually negative, but I don't know if I read it quite like that. I think I read it either, if anything, it would be like, hey, be prepared for some major changes to the spec map. That would be kind of how I think it is what's referring to. But I also think that it could very well just mean, hey, be prepared for a big announcement or something like that, or a big speculative announcement or something like that, because you know I don't think they would post a clue necessarily to say that, hey, guess what, we're losing something. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess maybe that's just me trying to be positive about it and try to stay hopeful that. I mean, granted, like I said, when I looked at the first spec map, I wasn't super taken away by it. So hopefully, maybe that means something bigger is coming, and maybe maybe it's something different. Who knows? But I don't necessarily read it myself specifically that something huge is falling off or everything is changing. Everything you do is not the same, but who knows?
Yeah, I'm trying to view it from both sides. Like, I get what you're saying, Nick, with yeah, it could just be something massive just dropped right off the map.
Yeah.
Which honestly, I would be surprised if it was The Last of Us that dropped off the map. I'm kind of thinking along the lines of it being connected to a little bit of a rumor / clue that a lot of the originals that were on the first map weren't right, and that it's what kind of Seamus was saying, that the map's going to change a lot between now and the next one. But then I also view it as, yeah, there's something big that's coming that they just found out about. It's kind of just everything together is what I'm thinking. I'm like, it could be something big happened, but we lost something at the same time. I'm not entirely sure. But it definitely makes you think, and makes you kind of worried a little bit though at the same time.
I think
Yeah,
I think they're trolling too a little bit. I think there might be a little bit of like, hey, let's get them all worked up, because it could mean anything really. I mean, it could just be that they're just trying to get people to talk or whatever. Because I tell you right now, if the second map comes out and there's a balloon or a clown or something on it, they're gonna break the internet. Like, everyone's gonna lose their minds. But I don't know. I think I'm more along the like that thinking of, let's not take it as like doomsday, or take it as like everything is changing. But I think that there's definitely going to be some level of, hey, either these originals are changing, or we're getting another couple IPs that are pretty big, that ones we didn't think were going to be here, or maybe there's some big musical artist signing, whether we like it or we don't. Is there a big name that's being attached to this year's event again? Who knows? It could be any one of those things.
Yeah,
Or it could literally be like, hey, we're going to have a nuclear sludge monster out. Who knows?
Right. Or, I mean, and even on the other side, like, not referring to houses and stuff like that, is this, I mean, are we going to get announcements at some point? Is this
maybe,
because I started saying online the other day, with The Last of Us ending, if The Last of Us is like locked down and confirmed, would you not want to kind of just jump on the hype train and then
Yeah, I mean,
follow that?
I would think that they would want to announce it sooner than later, especially if the show is done or ending. I don't want to say done, but like the season is over or whatever.
Yeah.
But I would think that they'd want to get ahead of that and not let it kind of get too quiet to get people excited for it now rather than waiting. I mean, I don't know if it's like widely accepted that it's going to be at the event yet or not, but I think that it's pretty well assumed that it's going to happen. So if it does, you really want everybody to kind of like watch the show now, and then forget about it in 3 months, and then when it comes back, like, oh, hey, look at that. And I'm not saying they're gonna forget everything, but like it will kind of go to the back of the cultural zeitgeist for the next few months, while it's kind of like people are either catching up with it or finishing it and haven't really watched anything about it since then. But I don't know, we'll see what happens. But I don't think that, again, I still don't think this is necessarily referring to something drastically changing with the map necessarily. I just think we're going to get one big announcement soon, or one big change to the map that kind of gets everybody talking, which could be, like, again, it could be it for all we know.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's really all we got to talk about. These speculation seasons are so interesting when we're like, all right, well, what do we talk about? Oh, someone dropped a hint that it's coming. Gives us something to talk about. So when it comes down to what we're talking about next week, your guess is as good as ours. I really have no clue. But I guess before we sign off, Michael, again, thank you for finally joining us. I know our planning is, well, you can see how our planning goes now. It's very very sporadic. But is there anything you got coming up on your end that you want to talk about? If not, go ahead and just plug all your channels again so that everyone listening can kind of easily find you. We've had your voice on a couple of our episodes before with the awards episodes, so they're semi familiar, but let them know exactly where to find you at.
Yeah, so I already kind of mentioned it. I do have that Texas trip coming up in July. So if you guys definitely are interested in that, you might want to follow me now so you stay up to date on that. I am hoping to finally move back down to Florida sometime this year. I've been away for far too
Nice.
long, and I think it's finally time that I make a return. Just in time for HHN this year, of course.
Right, makes it a lot easier to get to.
Yeah, absolutely. Then definitely plan on making a trip out to California again this year for Hollywood's event, and then of course Not Scary Farm's 50th anniversary. Whew, that is a big number for
That's
a haunt
crazy.
event.
Big one,
Especially since you look at Disney. Walt Disney World just celebrated its 50th, and that's a big theme park. We were talking about just
crazy.
a haunt event itself is celebrating 50 years. That's not
huge.
something you hit a lot.
No, not at all.
So I'm definitely
That's
excited to head back out there, because Scary Farm, if you haven't been, is definitely a life-changing experience as far as smaller theme park haunts go. Like, you can compare it to a normal Cedar Fair haunt as much as you want, but it's nowhere close, and the production of it is head and shoulders above every other Cedar Fair park.
Yeah, that's one. I always want to go out to the West Coast to kind of see, the horror nights out there as well. And it's never been like super enticing, but the most enticing aspect out of it was getting to Knott's Berry, and that's something at some point I would like to do. I'd like to say I'm going to go this year, but it's, who knows? That's a commitment I don't know if I can fully make yet. But yeah, that's what we got for this week. And again, like I said, next week, who knows what is going to happen on the internet?
Did you watch anything since?
Oh,
last week and this
I'm
week?
already messing up my segments. Yeah,
I was going to say, I almost missed a segment.
I almost missed it. We're still
new.
working
It's
into
new.
it.
We're just now starting to talk about this stuff.
So the horror watch of the week, I did go out and see Scream 6. Without spoiling anything, I enjoyed it. I really did. For me, it was a little predictable. I kind of picked out the individual or potential individuals that I thought were going to be the ghost face this time. And I was pretty accurate with some of it. I enjoyed the new setting. It's fun to finally break out. It felt very much like a Scream movie. The intro really, really pissed me off until it turned on itself. And I'll leave that intro part of it, by itself. Scream has always done a very good job of every intro is similar yet very distinctly different, and it's that quintessential who done it, and that's why we love these movies. But I thought that they used the setting pretty good. We got a lot of the subway stuff, we got the different apartments, we got the cityscape, which was nice. I really enjoyed it. I think it picked up off the last one very well, and I want to go see it again in theaters. I'm already kind of itching to all right, get back into it and see it again. So I'm curious where the franchise goes from here. I think the 7th one is already greenlit. So we'll see. We'll see what comes of it. But I definitely enjoyed it. It obviously came out last week, so it's still in theaters. So go see it. There's nothing like a horror movie in a movie theater. So get your tickets and go check it out. Anybody else watch anything else good this week?
Not horror. I keep forgetting to find something new to watch for this segment. So I'm also pretty bad and forgot it. I will admit I watched season 4 of You, which was good.
Similar. That fits.
If you're a fan of that show, it's definitely not a season you want to miss. I'm getting ready to sit down and probably start watching Ted Lasso season 3 because that show is amazing.
Ooh, yes.
The only other thing I watched was that MH370 documentary.
Oh, I did watch that too.
On Netflix. Episode 1 was good. Episode 2 and 3 were batshit insane, but that's besides the point. Nothing horror specific. I got to sit down and actually watch some new horror stuff, or at least some old horror stuff that I haven't seen before. Which I've mentioned it once already. You need to send me the account for information.
For Shudder.
For Shudder, because I can't access it. But and then the only thing I can tell you not to watch is Megan, because that movie was trash.
We didn't hit it.
But go back and listen to our review episode last week and tell me how much I'm wrong, because I know everybody can't wait to meet me in person and tell me I'm an idiot. So.
I too, just like Nick, did watch Scream 6. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, honestly. It's probably one of the better ones that I've seen in recent history as far as Scream movies go. I wasn't the biggest fan of 4, and 5 was just kind of okay. So it's already better in my opinion than those two movies, which may trigger some people because I know some people do like the 4th movie. But yeah, I really think that this franchise is going in a pretty decent direction. I think it's in good hands with the new leading ladies. And in my opinion, I mean, Neve Campbell wasn't in it, and to be honest, I didn't really notice.
No, it felt fine, and it sucks that she's not there, but it's touched upon. It's fine. It doesn't mean she won't be back. I mean, we've seen Halloween movies without Jamie Lee Curtis, so
exactly,
it happens.
I feel like they kind of not to get into the discussion about Scream movies, and I haven't seen this yet, so I do need to see it. But it kind of left at the end of the last one, kind of like we're turning the torch over, like we're handing it off to the next generation, essentially.
Jenna Ortega,
and like giving it to the new generation and say, hey, this is now your franchise. We're done. It's no longer our story; it's your story. So I think it was a nice way of kind of like handing it off. So it would make sense that this one didn't really have any of the older characters. Now, granted, I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know if anybody else shows up in it, but I do kind of like how they kind of passed that off. So I'm excited to go see it at some point.
Yeah, I have one major complaint though about the movie, and that's the fact that they need to let people die.
Yeah, they definitely protect people.
There's a couple people, not gonna name who, that definitely should have, but
yeah,
that's about all as far as I'll go with it.
It suffers from the Star Wars
yeah,
issue. None of the characters die.
Where there's absolutely no way, and then wow, magically there they are. Yeah, that was the one thing that I left the movie like, come on.
Yeah,
Come
yeah,
on.
a little,
Be
a
a little
little
bit bolder.
ridiculous.
Be a little
Yep.
bit bolder. Let it happen. You're gonna piss a couple people off, but you gotta stick with your guns and let it happen.
Yeah, it is what it is. At some point, if a certain person gets enough damage, you can realistically write them off.
Yeah, I feel like me and you are both on the same page with one character in particular that we both have in our minds.
Yes, definitely one, and there's a second as well that was like, I think it's like that's a little unfeasible, but sure, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
do your thing, I guess.
But I mean, other than that, though, yeah, it was a really enjoyable movie, and like you said, I loved the change of scenery, it being in New York rather than Woodsboro, but I will say, kind of both bummed but relieved that they didn't go the kind of run of the mill route with having a movie in New York where they include Times Square in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
I wanted to see it, but at the same time, I'm glad they didn't go with the New York movie cliche.
yeah, like we didn't need it. We don't need the Statue of Liberty shot. We don't need,
You're telling me you don't
Times
like
Square.
Jason Takes Manhattan?
Jason takes
love
the boat to
Jason
Manhattan.
Takes Manhattan.
All right, great. 'Cause that movie's amazing.
No, that is
I wish we
a
got more New York.
controversial, one of my favorite Friday the 13th films.
That's great. Well, I think that about wraps it up for our It discussion, our pseudo Scream discussion. Yeah. So, well, until next time, this is Nick.
This is Seamus.
And this is Michael.
Happy haunts.
This is cursed. Cursed. It's got a death curse.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare.
And again, I would just like to thank Vampire Stepdad for letting us use his music for our intro and outro music. So if you would, just go check him out. Spotify, Facebook. Again, that is Vampire Stepdad.